We now welcome head coach of the New Orleans Saints. This is awesome. Sean Payton, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate you having me on.
I know that you're here with Zebra Technologies, which I found fascinating. I mean, it's player tracking. I'm sure you use it for practice, tracking people at the beginning of the season versus the end of the season.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell us what you're doing with them?
Yeah, so we partnered. Look, our league's partnered with Zebra, and we as a team have a partnership with them. And ours started with the idea of really helping reduce soft tissue injury. The ability for us to track a player at practice and get an idea of what kind of workload he had on a 2-a-day or a Wednesday practice versus a Thursday, and have a little bit more exactness to what we felt like was a difficult practice or an easier practice. And you're looking for outliers, maybe guys that are overtraining. So that was the beginning, and quite simply, that's simply done with chips in the shoulder pads and a field. You have to outline the field, and then anytime a player's inside that area of that invisible field, if you will, you get that data. And it happens now. Like all the stadiums, like this Super Bowl, will have that field, and so every player in this Super Bowl will have the 2 chips in the shoulder pads.
Yeah.
The next gen stats when you get 21 miles an hour. That's Zebra.
Is it something that even trickles down to your players? Like, do you present to them the data to help improve their own games?
I think, well, look, it'll be to their coaches, and then I might walk over to a player and say, hey, you realize now your last 3 days you've been
80%.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And so now a step further, it's in the footballs now.
Yeah.
All right. It's giving us the ability to see where kickers are making, their kicks, where the ball's going through the uprights, instead of, it was the upper left inside the uprights. We can actually come up with a grid and say, look, his kicks are hitting 5, 7, 9, and 11 squares, and much like a golfer would. And so it gives you, look, it's going to be how we call touchdowns eventually. Did the ball cross the plane? Where were his knees?
And instead of just a person walking across from the other side of the other
I think
sideline
the worst
walking.
example is when we punt a ball high and out of bounds, and the side judge walks up with his hand in the air, and the umpire all the way back, or the referee, finally then lifts his arm and says, right about there.
Yeah.
When this is going to give you really the exactness within a foot.
Coach, let's talk about your team. What you did with Taysom Hill this year was incredible, and that was never more apparent than against the Minnesota Vikings. We know this league likes to pick and choose what they take from other teams. Would you expect other teams to try to emulate what you did with Taysom this year, or is that kind of player just rare?
Well, in fairness to the question, I think the player is hard to find. Rare might be the right word. I think the player's hard to find. We are like that as a league, where we'll look for the next Alvin Kamara or the next Richard Sherman, or pick a player who's had success. But he's unique, and how we found him was really unusual. We were watching. You guys know at the end of training camp, 90 goes to 53.
Of course.
Not in 2 cuts, but in 1. So it used to be 2 cut downs.
Yeah.
When it goes to 1, you basically have a day and a half now to take that information, all these players, 32 teams, 90 to 53, and trust some of the evaluations you've made. So we were looking at a player on Green Bay's team as a practice squad candidate. Simply, hey, do we like this receiver to come to our practice squad, not our active roster? And while we were doing that, and I kept noticing this number 7, and I was like, Jeff's our director of college scouting. I said, who's 7? And I saw, this isn't still Sean Hill, is it, from Maryland? He's like, no, it's Taysom Hill. I said, well, what don't we like about him? And then I'm like, bring me the cut up. And so we spent another hour and a half watching him. And I said, we're putting a claim in on him. And so a claim is much different, obviously. If you're putting a claim in.
Other teams can get it too.
Yeah, but when you put a claim in on a player, you are actually bringing him to your 53.
Right.
And so different than a practice squad player where I get on the phone and say, hey, we'd love to have you on our practice squad. I don't have to do anything other than recruit him.
No, you had to cut someone else.
Yes, and there's no recruiting. And so my only concern is we were claiming at the 11 position, and I thought if anyone's really watching the same film I'm watching, 1, 2, 3, those ahead of us, have a chance to claim the player. And so that we had to wait through those 10, and we were fortunate enough to get him at 11.
Another unique player is Michael Thomas, and this is the trust tree. So we can be friends and honest here.
Yeah.
I want your honest opinion of what the expectations were when you drafted him, because obviously he has now become one of the best receivers in the entire league.
Yeah, well, look, he wasn't drafted in the 5th or 7th round. He was drafted in the 2nd round, and the expectations, we just felt like, man, we saw a physical player.
Mm-hmm.
He was part of a really good football team with a lot of talented players. And so, look, he's catching the ball on these slants, these hitches, and down the field throws. But every time he's got it, you see the run after the catch. Yeah, did you know exactly? Well, if you knew exactly what Michael is now, you might have used your one to get him.
He would have been taken early.
But we loved his size, and, you know, his uncle's Keyshawn, who I coached at Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
There were a lot of ties there to drafting this player, and I remember there were a couple players, but he was our number 1 receiver in that draft class, and there was a handful taken in the 1st round. There were 2 or 3.
Corey Coleman,
yeah,
Will Fuller.
Yep, a kid out of Ole Miss. Then went to Minnesota. Yep, and so fortunately we got the right one. And man, he's so physical at the line of scrimmage. I've done this a long time, and on Thursdays we do 3rd down, and we do a lot of bump and run, man look. And so when the quarterbacks are getting loose, I'll run out there sometimes just to jam the receivers or give them a look. And I did that with Mike once, and I'm telling you, I felt like I was in a car wreck. This finger here, my right ring finger, was going like sideways. I had a bruise on my chest. He's so physical off the line of scrimmage. It's the one thing that you can't appreciate, but when you feel it firsthand, I mean, I was sore for like a week and a half.
Got it.
That's the end of that.
Coach, thanks so much.
No more bump and run. Yeah, thank you
Sean
guys.
Payton, this was amazing. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate you guys.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.